have the place looking bright as a new pin.
Oh, that lovely dress again. You wore it so well to the last gathering.
One question very important. Est-ce que les DVD vont sortir en Angleterre pour plus s'y mettre en France?
She'd like to know if the DVDs of the series will be available in France or in England so they can be imported.
They will be available in England.
En Angleterre, oui.
Yes. Yes. Have to get them in French, sure.
Thank you.
Complètement familière avant de commencer les questions sérieuses qu'on a toutes. Est-ce que Sam est aussi sexy en vrai qu'à la télé?
Sam is as sexy in real life as on TV.
Yes.
Of course.
He's a good friend of mine. And, my husband was reading one of my conversations on Twitter with him, and he said, "You talk to him like he's your little brother."
Ils sont devenus amis et comme elle est toujours en train de communiquer par Twitter avec lui, son mari a dit mais on dirait que c'est ton petit frère maintenant.
No, he's got a good sense of humor, a very nice man.
En plus.
Y a-t-il des questions sérieuses?
Avec la sortie de la série, elle a pu découvrir le tome 1 peut-être d'une manière un peu plus différente. Est-ce qu'après coup, avec la réalisation du tome 1 en série, est-ce qu'elle s'est dit que peut-être, avec du recul, elle aurait pu changer la suite de l'intrigue, avec certaines choses ou bien regretter?
After having seen the series, maybe revisit the first volume, and did you feel like you'd like to change it now? Maybe you would have written differently.
No. I did it the best that I could when I wrote it, so yeah, I can't do any better.
Olivia, est-ce que tu peux donner la poupée de Sonic de côté? Elle dégage un petit peu, s'il te plaît.
How was
Si c'est gentil.
for the first time of network and
Television. It was very good. We were very lucky to have the people that we have. It could easily be horrible, but Ron is a very good artist himself. He has great respect for the work, and he says to the fans, my job is to not screw up my wife's favorite book. No, I am a consultant on the show, so I have no power, but they do ask my opinion. They send me the scripts. I've seen the first 2 scripts for season 2 now, and they're good. And they also show me the daily footage, the shots that they take every day. And they don't send me what they call the closed set ones. These are the ones where people are naked. I don't see those. Well, I have seen the ones where they're not naked, and the way that it works is even if they do everything exactly right, they do it over and over and over and over and over. And I can see how if you were naked and having to do this over and over with the knowledge that 40 people were watching you, this would be uncomfortable. So.
And
Vous avez une traduction? Non, je n'ai pas l'impression que...
Il y a des besoins en traduction? Oui,
je résume.
D'accord, il n'y a pas de souci.
Ils ont eu beaucoup de chance que avec l'équipe qui fait la série, parce que d'abord ils ont beaucoup de respect pour l'œuvre originale, et que le réalisateur a dit de toute façon je ne peux pas me permettre de mal faire l'adaptation du livre préféré de ma femme, et qu'elle est consultante sur le tournage, c'est-à-dire on la consulte, elle donne des conseils, mais elle n'intervient pas du tout dans l'histoire, et qu'elle reçoit régulièrement les rushs, et sauf ceux où les gens sont nus. J'ai un peu ça résume.
Elle reçoit les vaches, mais pas la partie où ils sont tout nus, parce que c'est gênant, c'est inconfortable pour les acteurs d'être vus 40 fois.
Voilà.
Pas pour nous, hein.
So I had a question. Has it happened that you watch one of the rushes they sent to you and you find that it's not entirely how you imagined it or how it should be? It's not truthful to the story, and you give your opinion. Do they follow your opinion, or?
Usually I catch things before they actually shoot them. Okay. Once in a while, though, at early in the filming, they invited me to go to the set, and to have a small part in the show,
Yes.
which was fun. Yeah. But after that was over, I was sitting outside the set with my husband while they did the oath taking, where Dougal is swearing to Colum and so forth. And I was watching on the monitor, and I could see that they had Colum holding Dougal's hands, and he picked them up and kissed them. And I said, no, that's not right. It's the other way. And my husband said, well, you should tell them. And I was saying, well, I'm shy. I don't want to tell them that. He said, no, you're the consultant. You have to tell them that. So I told them, and they ran right in and told the actors to do it the other way, and they did.
So they do listen.
Oh yeah, they do. But I'm very diplomatique when I tell them things like that.
La question est de savoir s'il lui arrivait de voir des choses dans la série qui lui convenaient pas et qui lui plaisaient pas. Et qu'elle dit que généralement elle peut intervenir avant le tournage.
D'accord.
Mais il arrive comme une scène par exemple où
La scène du
serment
serment
à Dougal, où elle a remarqué que l'un embrassait les mains de l'autre et elle trouvait que c'était pas comme ça qu'il fallait le faire, donc elle a hésité longuement parce qu'elle voulait pas intervenir. Finalement son mari l'a convaincue et elle a été leur dire et ils ont changé la scène.
D'accord.
You continue to write your series.
Yes.
Do you see the actors' faces while you're writing now the
No.
next book? No.
No, I've been living with these people in my head for 30 years. I'm not going to lose them. No, I tell people the book is the book and the show is the show. For me they're separate things, but I enjoy them both very much. And they overlap.
Et que la série n'influence pas du tout sa vision des personnages puisqu'elle vit avec depuis 25 ans et qu'elle dit toujours aux gens la série c'est une chose mais le livre c'est une autre chose.
You say the name of Jamie is Jamie. I was inspired by a Doctor Who character. You are fan of Doctor Who?
Oh yes.
And no, always?
For a long time,
New
yeah.
series. Sorry?
For a long time, yes.
Tu veux dire toujours?
Oui.
Ouais. If you're still a fan of Doctor Who
yes.
even now.
Yes,
Because it's hard
It's harder to see.
series and
Yeah, no, I have to wait for the DVDs. But yeah, I do.
They're doing reruns on French TV right now.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Et justement, par rapport à toutes ces scènes assez violentes, est-ce qu'il y en a une qui vous a marqué plus qu'une autre durant toute la série, justement?
There's a lot of violence scenes. Is there one scene in particular that
Qui était plus difficile à écrire?
was more difficult to write than others?
Oh, it is not really difficult to write the violent scenes. The emotional scenes are very difficult emotionally because you live through them. But with both emotion and violence, this is a principle that's true of all art. You get much more effect from restraint than you do if you are excited yourself. My husband calls it laughing at your own jokes. If you are making a big fuss about, how terrible this is, or this is so violent, or so awful, I can't stand it, sort of thing. And you don't do that. You stand back a little, and you tell it very clearly and as simply as you can. And this will have a much bigger impact on the people who read it than if you were going all over the place.
Et en fait, c'est pas tellement difficile d'écrire des scènes de violence, c'est plutôt les scènes émotionnelles, parce que forcément, en les écrivant, on les vit. Et qu'une manière, c'est justement de prendre du recul et de dire exactement ce qu'on ressent quand on écrit la scène.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes, well, they are another of the patterns that recurs. Part of the reason for having so many dispossessed orphans, changelings, and so forth, is that the books are already very complex. To have people who had attachments, who had a lot of family backstory, this would be difficult because you would have to deal with that backstory in order to make them completely well-rounded people. For instance, Jamie would not be who he is without his parents and Murtaugh and his sister and his nieces and nephews. He has a whole constellation of people around him, and I could do that for him. To do that for all of the people, we would have a huge mess. And so by making the people be orphans, this simplifies things. But beyond that, the deeper intent here is to show the nature of connections, that they are not only of flesh and blood, but, of the spirit and of love.
Sur la question des enfants, il y a beaucoup de personnages ont été soit échangés dans leur enfance, ou ils sont orphelins, ou ils ont été élevés par eux. Et elle dit que dans les personnages, par exemple, avec Jamie, il a un passé qui était très développé. On connaît l'histoire de sa mère, son histoire avec Murtaugh, etc. Ça lui permet d'avoir un personnage très très développé. Elle ne veut pas faire ça avec tous les personnages parce qu'ils sont très nombreux. Donc le fait qu'ils soient orphelins, ça aide un petit peu. Ça facilite un peu parce qu'on n'a pas de background à faire.
It's a hypothesis, but do you think that John Gray's books would be TV series or included in the script of the next seasons of Outlander?
I don't know. Perhaps when we get to Voyager, he is not really present in the series as an adult until that point. He will be in Dragonfly and Amber, but, as we see him there as a 16-year-old boy, and, without his additional stories. I don't know. Technically, the film people do not own those books. They own the main series, and so they would have to make another arrangement with my agents in order to use that material. But I do occasionally, show them something when I'm talking to the production people about the scripts and the outlines, and sometimes they will talk to me before they write something and say, well, what was going on here that maybe was not in the book. And I had a long lunch with Ron about what Guylas Duncan was doing after she escaped from the witch trial. Because, of course, we think she's dead in Dragonfly and Amber, but she's not, so what was she doing? Well, I knew that, and so I told him, and, he may use some of what I told him in the second season, he may not, I don't know, but he has that information. But that's never been written down, so it wasn't an issue for me to tell him that.
That's when she's in France, right?
Yes.
When she's in
Mélisande. That's right. Yeah, the other thing, there's a short story called Virgins, which is from a book called Dangerous Women, which I think you will shortly get. Yeah, the publisher was just telling me about it today and how she's decided to publish it in 2 volumes, one with the male authors and one with the female authors, because it's too big to do as one book. But anyway, that book is about Jamie and his best friend Ian being young mercenaries in France. And it happens before Outlander. Well, I gave that story to the production people as well, in case they might use it. And they did use material from it in one of the later episodes, in episode 13, I think it is. So if you've read that story by then, you will see the small bits that they used there. And in fact, they used them very cleverly. We did not make a special arrangement about that, because I didn't tell my agents.
Could they do about...
La question était de savoir si les aventures de John Gray vont être mêlées à la série. Et Diana a répondu que dans le premier tome, ça ne se pose pas vraiment, puisqu'il n'est pas vraiment un personnage, c'est juste un gamin de 16 ans. Mais il arrive, par exemple, que pour des raisons de logique, ce que fait la série ait besoin de renseignements qui ne sont pas dans le livre. Comme par exemple ce qui se passe à Gaylis, entre le moment où Gaylis a échappé au bûcher des sorcières et avant qu'on la retrouve aux Antilles, elle a une vie. Or, ce n'est pas dans le livre, mais Diana sait ce qui est arrivé. Donc elle leur explique qu'ils puissent à eux aussi donner de la substance au personnage. Et il y a une autre nouvelle qu'elle a écrite qui sera peut-être publiée en France, et qui sont les aventures de Jamie et de Yann avant.
Quand ils étaient en France. Oui.
Et par exemple, pour que le réalisateur puisse en tenir compte dans la création du personnage de Jamie. Elle leur a donné cette nouvelle et ils ont utilisé des passages, des idées de cette nouvelle pour l'intégrer dans leur série.
I must tell you something which just occurred to me before I forget again. Yesterday I had an email from a nice gentleman named Guillaume Lecomte, who is the new French tutor for the show. And he said that Sam Hewen had given him my address. He said he would like to know what was the background of the various characters with France and French speaking, so that he could appropriately design them dialects and accents to be appropriate to who they are. Because Claire, of course, is speaking French from the 1940s and from the north of France, which is where she was, in Normandy and up toward the border with Belgium. She would not ever have been in the south, so she did not have language from that. But also she traveled in the Middle East with her uncle, and so she would have been picking up the sort of French they speak in Algeria and Egypt and so forth. Very low-class French for the most part, but also academic French, because her uncle was an archaeologist. And at that time, many of the papers were written in French, and that would be very educated. So he's going to have a lot of fun with her. But I told him about Jamie, and being a mercenary, but also that he was at the Université for 2 years before that, and would therefore have access to very educated French as well as soldiers' French. So we'll see what he does with that. It's going to be very complicated.
Is it true for
the TV show, yeah.
Elle a reçu un email du français qui va s'occuper de la côté français, de l'aspect français dans la série, en lui demandant s'il pouvait préciser quel était le rapport de chaque personnage avec la France. Comme par exemple, on sait que Jamie a été à l'université et qu'il a été mercenaire en France. Claire, pendant la guerre, elle était en Normandie, en même temps. Avec son oncle archéologue, ils ont été beaucoup en Afrique du Nord, où elle a ramassé elle a dû capter des expressions, et donc ça participe à la création des personnages.
Je suis prêt.
Is there any chance that they might shoot part of the second season in Paris? Like even one episode?
Please. I really don't know. They have designed most of the sets, the interiors, to be done in Cumbernauld at their studio, because a set is a set. You can design anything. But for the exterior shots, I don't know. They might do a little location work here, but they haven't told me so.
Fingers crossed.
Lots of volunteers for tutoring if the need.
Okay. Especially Sam.
He's a very good learner.
And do you know when will the season 2 start to film?
I do, yeah. I'm not sure I'm allowed to tell you, but it's in May.
Some say it in an interview yesterday, so it's May.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I know what the date is, but I'm not doing that. I don't know why not, but they tend to be pretty secretive about these things.
Would you say that your focus is less on writing now than it was before the TV series started?
My husband says that. He says you have to stop doing all these things, so you can get another book written. It's not that my focus is less, because I'm still concentrated very firmly on the writing and what I do, and I write every day. I work in the middle of the night, so it's not really a distraction what I do during the day, but all of the travel and the appearances and things like that take a lot of time. And so I'm very choosy about which ones I do.
So do you write in the middle of the night at the hotel when you're traveling?
Yeah, sometimes less than I would at home, because I have to get up in the morning and sometimes get up early. So I may work only an hour or two instead of 4 hours, which is my usual. I definitely do work every day. That's important to keep words going.
When you work, do you have in mind already what you're going to... Do you have something that you have to write down, or do you just sit at your desk and say, okay, I have to write a book, so I need to...
Some of them. I don't usually finish a scene in one session. I will start something, and it may be just a few scattered paragraphs to begin with, but that will stay with me through the next day, and it develops and begins to have principles. And I will hear lines that people say, and I'll have that in mind when I sit down and get to work at night, and so I put that in, and then I go back and forth and just reading it over again stimulates other questions. I read in the back of my mind to say, how does that unfold? What is this? And
savoir si ça ne l'avait pas déconcentré par rapport à son travail d'écriture. Elle dit que non, parce que de toute façon, elle travaille la nuit, et tous les jours. Normalement, c'est 4 heures, quand elle est en voyage, etc., c'est un petit peu moins. Et qu'elle écrit par fragments, c'est-à-dire qu'elle n'écrit pas une scène d'un coup. Elle va mettre quelques paragraphes, et puis petit à petit, ça va lui rester pendant la journée. Et elle va ajouter, alors on a la question, rajouter un personnage, rajouter la lumière, rajouter le contexte. C'est comme ça qu'elle travaille.
D'accord.
Mais elle continue d'écrire régulièrement.
Do you think your books are can be classified as romance, historical, science fiction, or all of this?
Oh, all of that
Yes?
and a lot more too. So far, I've seen my books sold as literature, fiction, historical fiction, science fiction, fantasy, mystery, romance, military history. Gay and lesbian fiction, and horror. No, this is true. I won a Quill Award, rather prestigious, in the science fiction, fantasy, and horror category, for which I beat both George R.R. Martin and Stephen King. Did you get that, or shall we say so?
Non, parce qu'en fait, on lui a demandé dans quelle catégorie elle situait ses livres. Et elle dit elle a déjà eu ce livre dans la catégorie sentimentale, histoire militaire, histoire gay et lesbienne, science-fiction, fantasy,
Histoire militaire.
thriller.
Fantasy.
Elle a même gagné un prix où elle a battu Stephen King et un autre.
Games of Thrones.
You win Game of Thrones.
No, good.
I have another question. In around September or October last year, you did say that France had one TV channel had signed a contract with Sony.
That was my understanding, yeah.
Okay.
But
Can you confirm that, or?
no, I don't. I mean, I can't, because they don't consult me on business and decisions like that. It lies with the Sony people. Now, what someone had told me more recently was that there are 2 channels that want the show, and they are sort of bidding against each other. No, I don't know that. I don't know that for a fact. It was just gossip, but it may be the case. And I don't know which one will win, if it's true.
Okay.
But they did say that they had a deal in France.
Okay.
They may just have meant that meant they had someone who had said, yes, I want it. Do you have questions? You can ask in French.
Oui, en fait, non, c'est anglais, c'est bon. Parce que je suis un peu panique parce que j'étais bloquée dans le métro. Basically, I'm from New York City. I'm a transplant. And I did in Oxford and Dublin.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yes, thank you very much for the nice gifts.
Glad you liked it. I would like to know, I know I've been a long-time fan. You say that your character development, sometimes you've got like tough nuts and sometimes you've got mushrooms.
Yeah.
But I'd like to know a little bit more about the alchemy of how you put characters together. And the biggest question is, do you, like Claire and Jamie, have like a fatal flaw? Do you insert that kind of quality in your character?
No, they just seem to have flaws as they come. I don't invent them. No, I don't design characters. I think some writers do. They have wall charts about what kind of peanut butter and what kind of shoe size their characters have and things like that. But I don't. I just the characters kind of either they come along for me or I can tell they're there and I have to think about them for a long time. But then they come forward. But yeah, they come with what they have. I don't give them anything.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Elle ne crée pas ses personnages selon un concept où tout est prévu à l'avance avec un tableau, avec tous les goûts, les dégoûts, etc. Elle les laisse venir petit à petit et avec leurs défauts et leurs qualités et après la chimie se fait directement sur la page.
D'accord. Bon, je suis désolée mais la rencontre va s'arrêter là parce qu'il y a d'autres personnes qui attendent pour les signatures. Donc... I have a question about the books. Everybody is going very frothing at the mouth about all the rapes in the series, but I noticed there is all the changelings, and nobody seems to pick that up. I mean, so many children are not their parents' children, or are foster children. All, I mean, there is Fergus, Brianna, Claire, Roger, Willie.
Yeah, orphans. Yeah,
Yeah.
there are a lot of orphans and changelings. Well, you know, there are a lot of patterns in the books. They're very big books. They're very complex, and I've written them in layers, so that often people read the top layer, which is, you know, the excitement and the adventure and this, and they don't see some of the deeper things. They go back later and read them again, and then they begin to see the deeper things. Okay, about the rapes and so forth, this is just political correctness, you know, it is just this particular point in time, people are proposed to go, oh, about things like that. You know, they've been there for the last 25 years, no one has noticed until just now, and now only because it is politically correct to be offended, and, you know, I don't care if it offends people. But, you know, that is one of the patterns that what we're doing with that is not to be gratuitous, to shock the audience, to titillate them. They're there because the books are very much about sex, amongst other things, and the connections between people. Well, this is a variation of sex, which is about disconnection between people, and therefore it's an important thing to notice in this continuum of, you know, sexual contact that you have. People only see the top, you know, and this, but it is a continuum because of this physical intimacy that it involves. And so, you know, I don't make a point of it, because to me, a book that has a political agenda is always a bad book. I've read many of them. And so, you know, I would never do that. But in passing, one thing that you see in today's modern world is because people have suddenly decided to be excited about rape in a, you know, totally moral way, they regard it as a single thing. You know, rape is always a crime of anger, or rape is always this, you know, people who have suffered rape are victims, you know, or they're survivors or so forth. But they don't ever look at a single incidence, you know, what happens between, you know, two people, and they have this violent encounter. It is a very singular thing, just the same way that the sexual encounters between people who love each other are single. I tell people that a good sex scene is one that could only have happened to these two people. Not to any two people, but only to these two people. And that's why, you know, the sex scenes in my books are engaging and interesting and so forth. The same way, a rape happens only between two individuals. And if you look at those occurrences in my books, and they're not all over the place, you know, there are maybe one every other book, but, yeah, and compared to all the other things that are happening, very small. But, you know, what happened to Brianna is quite different from what happened to Claire when she was kidnapped and so forth. And both those things were very different from what happened to Jamie with Blackjack Randall and so forth. And it is what happens in each of those instances, but much more important, what happens after that. How does the person who was attacked deal with this? And that has a great deal to do with their psychology and the nature of the encounter and so forth. And, you know, what help they have at hand and so forth. Now, I have never, ever had a letter from someone who had been raped, who said, "This is terrible, you shouldn't write about this, it gives me bad memories, I have dreams, you know, you should not do this." Never, that's never happened. But I have had a lot of letters from people who have suffered rape, and what they all say to me, sometimes they say, this was hard to read, but it was very cathartic, you know, very healing to me, both because you treat it so honestly, you know, this is what happened, and it allowed me, you know, to be in possession of myself again. It also showed me that it was possible to heal, because these people did, and so now I know I can do so, or I have done so as a result of reading your books. So this happens a lot, and I think these people are the only ones who are entitled to have an opinion about it.
And about the changelings, all about the
Oh, the changelings, yeah. Well, that is another pattern, you know.
Donc la question c'est de savoir, il y a des thèmes récurrents, enfin, qui surviennent comme le viol ou les enfants échangés, les orphelins, les enfants qui sont élevés par d'autres Et Diana a expliqué qu'en fait, elle écrit, il y a plusieurs niveaux dans chaque livre. Il y a le premier niveau qu'on voit qui est l'aventure, etc. Et qu'après, à la relecture, on peut percevoir d'autres des thèmes qui permettent de parler de notre monde aussi bien actuel que dans le 19e, au 18e, pardon. Et elle dit que s'il y a des viols, bien sûr aujourd'hui on a une vision du viol qui est très politiquement correcte, tandis qu'ils ont toujours existé. J'essaie de mais, et qu'elle a très rarement eu de courrier, elle n'a jamais eu de courrier de personnes en disant vous ne pouvez pas écrire, j'ai été violée, vous ne pouvez pas écrire ce genre de choses, mais plutôt des lettres de femmes qui ont subi un viol, qui lui disent que même si c'est difficile à lire, c'est écrit tellement sincèrement que ça fait du bien, ça leur permet aussi d'expurger quelque chose.
Et il y avait aussi le fait qu'une bonne scène de sexe, c'est une scène qui ne peut advenir qu'entre ces deux personnages-là.
Pour écrire une bonne scène de sexe, il faut que ce soit une relation sexuelle qui puisse survenir qu'entre ces deux personnages, à un moment donné.
D'accord.
Tout comme dans un viol. Le viol intervient parce que c'est cette personne et cette personne-là, et ce qui se passe dépend de la personnalité de chacun.
Et la façon de se relever du viol également.
Exactement.
Sing me a song of a lass that is gone. Say, could that lass be I? Mary of soul, she sailed on a day over the sea.